Industrial Revolution, Robotics and AI Partnerships, the rise of AI and robotics. The rise of AI and robotics sounds like a science fiction movie. Probably was. The keynote, I will invite the keynote first, and then I will invite the moderator and the panelists to join him. Our keynote speaker today is Vijay Pradeep. He's a TTIFC director. Right? He's a robotics engineer and has been involved in the robotics sector for the past 15 years. Vijay moved to Trinidad and Tobago in 2017. I hope he doesn't move out. To start Vertana, a robotics and software development and consulting company, aiming to grow the Caribbean's impact in the global robotics ecosystem. He was a co-founder of HiDoff, Inc., a Silicon Valley robotics firm that worked with Fortune 500 companies and startups in a variety of areas, including virtual reality, vehicular autonomy, drones, and industrial automation, and which was acquired by Google. Vijay received his BS in computer systems, focusing on robotics and mechanics, and his MSc is in mechanical engineering, focusing on control systems. Both his undergraduate and graduate degrees are from Stanford. Vijay's contributions to the robotic operating system and the PR2 robotic platform are now used widely in the open source robotics community. I invite Vijay Pradeep to come to the stage to give the keynote address of this session.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. And first off, I just want to say big congratulations to all of the students that came here today and competed in the competition. It was absolutely amazing. I don't know how many of you went over to the youth section and watched some of the competition, but it was absolutely exhilarating to see how many students were so excited and willing to just put so much energy into winning this competition. And it's great to see the turnout of it as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So I wanted to spend some time today talking to you all about the intersection of robotics and AI. And really, the main piece of this is bringing Trinidad and Tobago into the global robotics ecosystem. And I should get the clicker. And when we think about humanity as a species, we've had a long history of creating tools, machines, inventions to make our lives better, and also imbuing those machines with autonomy. And this is one of the first examples of autonomy that I could find. This is from the 1600s. So this is it's an incubator, and in the incubator there's a mercury thermometer. That mercury thermometer is mechanically connected to an air vent, connected to an oven, which, with that vent being controlled, it actually changes how hot that oven is burning. And with all of that combined, it's actually regulating the temperature of this oven to incubate eggs and keep them at a constant temperature. So this is taking in sensor data, making some decisions, and actually running autonomously without humans getting involved. So this is just one of the very first times that this has happened in humanity. And as we continue forward, there's all sorts of inventions and transformations that happened. One of the biggest ones being semiconductors and electronics. And from there, we had microprocessors, microcontrollers, computers, and really the entire digital era that we have today. And if we look at the early 2000s, we have a Roomba here, which many of you may be familiar with or have in your own homes. So an autonomous robot that's able to drive through your house and vacuum the floor without humans being involved, and doing it autonomously as well. And moving even a little bit more forward as well, here's a project that I'm excited to have joined right after university, which was building this robot called the PR2. So this robot here was able to go open a refrigerator, grab a drink out of the fridge, clean your living room, play pool, and do other household chores. And it might not be obvious at first, but this robot is much more similar to all the previous examples that I mentioned than you might realize, which is that it took a set of inventors and engineers, or in this case, roboticists like myself, but 60 of us, several years, spending days, nights, and weekends furiously toiling it away, writing hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Hundreds of thousands of lines of code that are fine-tuning every single behavior that this robot would do. Tweaking it, adjusting it, making sure it's picking up things in just the right way, moving to just the right locations. So we're really scripting what these types of robots would do. And if we now look at what robots look like today, The industry is fundamentally changing. And it's really what we're all here talking about today, which is the intersection, which is really big data and AI. And when we start thinking about this, we just have so much more computation available. We have so much ability to run compute on supercomputers that are actually not that expensive. So roboticists and software engineers like myself, we are no longer carefully crafting every single behavior that these autonomous systems need to make, but rather we're spending our time building pipelines and tools that are able to ingest this data, that are able to analyze that data, and then train machine learning models and AIs that we can then deploy on these robots that allow them to make these autonomous decisions for themselves. And that is a fundamental shift. And we're at an inflection point of this happening right now in our society today. And seeing this inflection point is what led me to start the company Vertana. So Vertana is a robotics software development and consulting company started in Trinidad 6 years ago, where we work with a variety of international companies on robotics problems and systems. And I'm going to use the time that I have with you all today to give a little bit of visibility into the types of problems that me and the team at Vertana have been working on internationally that actually have a global impact in AI and robotics, and then show you that we're actually building up the expertise locally to be delivering on these types of cutting-edge technology solutions, and then finally show that when we're building these new industries, both globally and locally, we're actually creating new types of jobs accessible by the entire population that didn't exist in Trinidad, nor did they exist in the entire world prior to this right now. So from here, I'll just jump into it with one example here. So this is a company based in Silicon Valley. That's Hippo Harvest is the name of it, and they're building autonomous greenhouses. So if you check out one of their greenhouses, it's absolutely impressive. You see these robots driving around, picking up plants, moving them around, watering them whenever they need water, fertilizing them, and doing that with no humans whatsoever. So while this system is impressive as a robot, the real secret sauce that makes this really magical is the fact that they are collecting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of data points across their entire greenhouse continuously. So measuring exactly the temperature, the humidity, the amount of water, fertilizer, all of these different parameters at every centimeter of their entire greenhouse. And they're able to track exactly how fast every single piece of lettuce in this entire greenhouse is growing. This data it's data, which is useful so they can see how they're doing, but it also lets their AI systems under the hood run hundreds of experiments simultaneously in their greenhouse, seeing how tweaking different parameters is improving how fast the plants are growing, how much water they're using, and they're able to result in using 92% less water than other approaches, which is a really big deal. And this is only the beginning. The more that they experiment with these approaches, the more they can increase yield, and the more they can actually improve food security really across the entire world as the population continues to grow. Another example that I'd love to talk about is from a company called Zipline, which is actually building drones that can deliver blood, vaccines, and critical medical supplies to hard-to-reach areas. So they're already deploying these systems in Ghana, Rwanda, and also in the United States. And these systems, they're able to run autonomously, they're able to be launched and collected again, and run continuously 24/7. So building these drones is an impressive feat onto itself, getting them to fly in all sorts of weather and being reliable enough to operate. But beyond that, when you have a fleet of these robots flying all through the airspace, coordinating with each other, coordinating with air traffic control, and also figuring out exactly where are they going to deliver in any specific location, this suddenly becomes not a robotics problem, but a big data and an AI problem. So using their sensors, exactly where in someone's backyard is the best place to drop something off. Or it's starting to rain. Should I abort my mission? Should I come back? Or should I keep going? I see a helicopter in front of me. Is that a helicopter or is that just a cloud? Should I avoid it? These are all AI and big data problems that go well beyond just building the mechanics of a drone like this one right here. And the third example I'd love to bring up is this robot made by Google in their Everyday Robotics program. So this robot that we see right here, it's able to drive through people's it's able to drive through offices, hospitals, and other public spaces and clean and sanitize those environments, making it safer for humans to be there. And this robot, when you look at it, it actually has a similar feel to the PR2 robot that I had mentioned before 10 years ago. So 10 years have passed, and the robots, you could say, maybe they don't look that different over this period of time. Well, practically many of the people that worked on the PR2 also worked on this robot, so that might have something to do with it. But if you look under the hood, the software and the systems that are powering this robot by Google are fundamentally different than what was done with this PR2 robot shown here. So digging into that a little bit, you have this robot, this everyday robot that's driving through an office or wherever it may be. But that robot doesn't see what we see. What it's seeing is data. What it's seeing is its sensor readings. What it's seeing are points scattered across the entire environment of what's out there. And this is just raw data. So what comes next is that the robot has to have been trained in understanding this information and making sense of everything that's around it in the world. So while this might be just a bunch of dots, what it really is to the robot is, okay, a computer, a person, a TV, a desk, all these different things. And it uses that information coming out of its ML, machine learning, and AI models to make decisions about what it needs to do next. What looks clean? What looks dirty? How am I going to move the brushes to actually continue cleaning the environment that's around me? And this is all happening using all of the data collected from the fleet of these robots all over the world and training machine learning models that are then deployed on these robots to solve these problems. So these are all interesting examples of how AI is really impacting this field of robotics. And there's many more applications of this technology. But I wanted to come back to one point that I said at the beginning. All of these companies, all of these projects that we've talked about here are examples of what me and the team at Vertana here in Trinidad and Tobago, so this is a team of 20 people, all based here in Trinidad and Tobago, are actually working on. So we are working with these cutting-edge companies on these cutting-edge problems, deploying these solutions globally with a global impact, happening right here from Trinidad and Tobago today, which I think is a really big deal. Thank you. And this is just one of the photos from our office. It's not a shiny Google office or some of the fancy tech photos that you might realize, but work can be done from anywhere. Work is distributed. The work that we're doing is in the cloud. It's working on data, working on simulation. We can do that from anywhere. And here, this is just an example of our team plus some students that we're working with in a coding competition, getting the next generation of students excited about robotics and AI and the future of what can be done in these industries. And so we're building that capacity locally. If people tell you that the talent doesn't exist here, I assure you it does. We are building it, it is growing, and the future is continuing to be trending upward in terms of the talent. So we talked about global applications, but this can also be applied locally. So I want to talk about just a couple examples about how we can bring that into the local context. So I mentioned the company Zipline doing drone delivery. One of their drone distribution centers or launch points, let's just say we put it at Mount Hope. That one distribution center can actually deliver blood, medical supplies, vaccines, whatever it may be, across all of Trinidad and Tobago, and it can distribute across all of Trinidad and even part of Tobago. And that is one distribution center. And zooming out a little bit beyond that, if we had a couple of those spread across some of the neighboring islands, we could actually have a supply chain independent of existing airlines, independent of airports, independent of seas, operating across most of the majority of the Lesser Antilles, happening instantly and happening autonomously. And this could actually be critical in resilience when there's hurricanes, when there's earthquakes, and when nominal infrastructure isn't working. And with climate change, floods just seem to be happening more and more often in these parts of the world. So this is technology that exists today and could be used in our region right now. Another example, thinking about sustainability, an example that's literally eroding our ecosystems today in the country is illegal quarrying. So here's just an example of one illegal quarry in Trinidad and Tobago. But imagine if you had a fleet of drones that were actually flying across the northern range of Trinidad, let's say, or even the entire country. They could be remapping the entire country in a matter of weeks or maybe a month. And having that data, that's a huge amount of data, But having that data, we can then analyze it using AI, using big data, computer vision, and be able to see where are these illegal mines, how are they evolving, are they getting bigger, are they getting smaller, and send that to the necessary authorities. And flipping that a little bit, maybe there are no illegal quarries that we're seeing. Maybe we're just seeing trees. And looking at how many, I see some people laughing in the audience, but that's fine too. So that maybe there are illegal quarries, but at the same time, like if we're just seeing trees in Trinidad, we can take that information and we can use that to figure out how many trees there are, what types of trees they are, the volume of biomass there is, and actually sell carbon credits based on that data. So we would be using AI and big data to actually create an entire new export, an entirely new source of foreign exchange for the country, which is a big deal. And then finally, we can talk about traffic. How many of you, show of hands, ended up driving into the Hyatt today? Show of hands, don't be shy. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not more, but we can keep those hands up. How many of you encountered a pothole that you had to either avoid or at least saw along the way? Okay, cool. So these are people that saw a pothole. How many people saw more than 5 potholes on the way here? More than 10 potholes? 20 potholes? Oh gosh, okay, I should stop counting at that point, but there's still too many hands up. So clearly this is a problem. And thinking about something as simple as potholes, imagine taking the types of laser sensors that we'd be putting on these drones, putting on these robots, just put a few of them on a few of the garbage trucks driving around Trinidad and Tobago. All of a sudden, we can have weekly updates on exactly how many potholes there are in the entire country and get weekly updates on that. Where are new potholes being formed? Where are they being formed? Where are they getting repaired? And what's happening? And that not only lets us understand why this is happening in the first place, but helps us hold the government accountable in terms of how much they're actually delivering service on repairing these types of situations. And it just becomes a data problem and a statistics problem, and it lets us have once again another tool in managing a situation like this. So these are just a couple examples of how this technology can be used locally. But it's important to remember that as we start deploying these technologies, it's not just for, this is not just creating jobs in terms of cutting edge AI and software engineering and AI experts in those types of fields. It's actually creating many types of new jobs as well. And I'd like to give a couple examples of that right here. So one of the projects that we worked on recently was with a Silicon Valley company that was developing AI-powered robots that were going to be working on factory lines, picking up items off of conveyor belts, moving them to other locations, and picking things off of warehouse shelves as well. So we were working on the system, developing a lot of it in conjunction with this client, and once the robots were actually deployed in the field, Vertana then was able to hire a team of what we call remote robot operators. Many of you may not have heard that term, and we hadn't either, because we had to invent the term, because the job didn't even exist. So we hired a team of remote robot operators that put on virtual reality goggles, remotely connected to this robot that was sitting in California. We're using the goggles to see what the robot saw and help teach it what tasks it had to do on the production line, explain to it by moving the robot virtually every time it made a mistake, and help train those machine learning models to do better based on this experience from the humans sitting right here in Trinidad and Tobago with a high bandwidth internet connection. And with jobs like this, you wonder, okay, what sort of expertise do these remote robot operators need? And the job posts that we have, the requirements there, first of all, you need really strong written and oral English communication, so strong communication skills. We're looking for people that are curious and adventurous about the field of robotics and really excited about what this technology can bring. And finally, the most important job requirement out of all of them was extensive experience playing hours of video games at a time. This is what we were looking for these jobs. This is an actual job requirement that we had. And these are jobs that it's not that they're new in Trinidad. This job hadn't existed anywhere in the world, and it's happening right here in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's amazing that we're able to play a part of that just because we're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with robotics. And another example is some of the work that we're doing with drones. So from some of our work that we've done with a drone delivery company, they're looking to deliver packages in people's backyards. And they're collecting data in the US. And what they've realized is that by collecting data in Trinidad and Tobago, the diversity of homes and just land that's here in Trinidad and Tobago, hillsides, farmland, rural, urban, suburban, large homes, small homes, galvanized roofs, concrete roofs, pitch roofs, all of these different types of homes that exist, concrete yards, grass yards, dirt yards, all of these different things. They realized that collecting that data in Trinidad and Tobago not only lets them deliver packages here in the Caribbean and Trinidad, but Trinidad is actually serving as the diversity of data that lets this organization deliver packages across the entire global south. And that is happening right here in Trinidad and Tobago with our drone operators collecting this data and using it to train these models, or collect this data, train the models, and label the data locally. And these are jobs that otherwise wouldn't exist in this part of the world. So in closing, I firmly believe that the future of AI plus robotics is bright. I think it's trending upwards, and it's going to have it's already having a global impact, and I think we're well on our way to building the talent that's needed to have an impact locally as well. We're building the team, we know the problems we need to solve, and we can use all of that to continue to use that expertise to deliver on solutions with the help of all of you as well. And I think as this continues to happen, we're going to be creating new types of jobs that we didn't even know existed. And to me, that is extremely exciting, and I'm excited to work with all of you and continue to build this ecosystem of robotics and AI right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you, everyone.
So Vijay will also serve as one of the panelists in this session. I will introduce the two other panelists, and then lastly, I will introduce our moderator. Patrick Hossain, Professor Patrick Hossain, attended Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he obtained 5 degrees, including a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science. He has worked at the Boza Corporation, I hope I pronounced that well, Bell Laboratories, AT&T Laboratories, Ericsson, and Huawei. He has published extensively with over 150 refereed and conference journals. He holds 41 patents in the areas of telecommunications and wireless technologies. He was nominated for Ericsson Inventor of the Year Award in 2004 and is a 2015 Anthony Sabga Caribbean Laureate for Science and Technology. Professor Hossain is a professor of computer science at the University of West Indies. His present areas of research include applied data science and pricing optimization for cellular networks. Professor Hossain, please welcome. Next, I will introduce Dr. Craig Ramlal. Dr. Ramlal completed his BSc in Electrical and Computer Engineering. He also has a Master's of Sciences. This is a very distinguished bunch. In Electrical and Computer Engineering, and his PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering. He split the sites of that between University of the West Indies and the King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals in Saudi Arabia. His work includes he's a regional coordinator for developing open data strategies for the Caribbean countries. He served as principal investigator for developing robotic systems and researchers from University of Florida to mitigate the risk of COVID-19 spread. With researchers from Tallinn University, he developed industrial diagnostic tools with deep learning for Estonia's national grid. He currently leads the Control Systems Group, serves as a principal investigator of the Intelligent Systems Lab, and is co-investigator in the ARC Labs research group at the University of West Indies. Dr. Ramlal, welcome to the stage. And leading us in the discussion this afternoon is a great friend of the UN, and is always here whenever we ask him, Axel Kravatsky. Axel is the president of the European Business Chamber in Trinidad and Tobago. Prior to becoming president of Eurocham, Mr. Kravatsky was vice president of the chamber as well, and he was also a practice group convener at the ESG Exchange, leading a team of international experts in the field of governance, and as a convener and vice chair of the International Organization for Standardization, IOS, ISO, well, I think it's ISO, we pronounce it here. Working Group 1 on governance of organizations. He therefore has had a leadership role in developing several ISO standards, most notably ISO 37005 and ISO 37006, which provide indicators for effective governance. Mr. Kravatsky is also a managing partner of Syntegra ESG, a leading corporate governance consulting firm and a member of the European Corporate Governance Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome your moderator for this session, Mr. Axel Kravatsky.
Hi, good afternoon. So very exciting presentation. Thank you very much. And my first question would be to the panel as a whole. You gave us many international examples and showed how Trinidad and Tobago is integrated into the international supply chain, as it were, or ecosystem. But the combination of AI and robotics is transforming industries all around the world. And I wonder if you can give us some examples within the local context of what new solutions have been developed, what sectors are transforming in what way locally that we can all relate to as well. So it is for everybody, you included, if you want.
If you want to take it first.
Yeah, I think when we look at the local ecosystem, personally, as an organization that's been developing robotic solutions, it's been tough for us to find local applications of where we can apply these cutting-edge technologies. I think many times organizations might be excited about using robotics, let's say, but it actually requires certain other levels of maturity around digitalization, understanding how to process their data, and understanding how to integrate some of these advanced technologies. And it takes time and effort and investment that I think has been a little bit hard for us to find in the local context and the local ecosystem. I don't know if either of you.
So my experience with it is that the regulation has at some point to change. We tried to do some stuff we did some stuff with our public utilities in developing drone systems to look at because we did it with Estonia, and it's running in Estonia's grid right now. So we tried to do it with our local company, but there are issues with how we can fly and the guidance that is there. But I do see things, especially in agriculture, that they started to have these systems planting seeds and doing fertilization and those kinds of things. And they are buying these drone systems to actually spray their crops. So those kinds of things are happening, especially in the agricultural space.
Well, in terms of what we are doing at UE, my focus is on research and in particular data science. We do research in multiple areas, wireless communications, optimization, etc. But in terms of data science, because it applies to basically any industry, as well as government as well, that's where I think most of my students will get jobs. And so my focus is on collaborating with industry so that they come up with unique solutions for local companies. And hopefully some of these solutions would apply to other third world countries that it could be exported. But of course, we try to avoid competing in areas that we don't have the resources. We can't compete with what big tech is doing in terms of generative AI, etc. So we want to focus on solving problems locally, and with that skill set, be able to export hopefully in the end.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I stay with you, Professor. As we are integrating and proliferating AI and robotics, are there new and integrating into workflows, and so existing workflows, are there new solutions that are being developed to problems that until now could not be solved?
So I won't talk about the robotics part. I'll leave that for PJ. But,
or data from the data science, whichever.
But what we found working with local companies, banks and insurance companies, distribution companies, power companies, etc., is because of the difference in our environment. It's a small population. Our culture is different, etc. The solutions required are different. So sometimes we can't use off-the-shelf solutions. We have to modified or even come up with a unique solution. In particular, if you look at something like the insurance industry, we're talking about a few thousand customers for a company, whereas in a developed country, it'll be hundreds of thousands of customers. So the quantity of data isn't as big. So whereas in a developed country, you could just throw all that data at a neural network and get a good solution, it's not possible here. So we have to do a more unique type solution. So yeah, that's.
So the sectors are also not equal. So some sectors, maybe like finance, has been working with data for a longer time and more technology focused than others. What about sectors that have not traditionally focused on technology? What can they do in order to remain or become competitive?
Well, they would have to get involved in data science, but there's no need to just jump in and buy the latest thing on the shelf, right? There are simple tools. A lot of the work we've done with companies, we use open source solutions.
By open source, you mean free?
Free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is important to a lot of the business leaders here.
Right. Yeah. But it does the job. It may not provide the level of benefit as you would with a off-the-shelf, more expensive solution. But for those companies, those small companies, that would be the best way to start off. Get some of our UE graduates or interns to work with them, come up with these solutions, and you build from there. Once you see the benefit of these simple solutions, then you could invest in more expensive solutions as well.
All right. So seeing the possibility that there are also free solutions, and the most important thing is taking a step and attempting something.
Yeah.
And finding then, because there are many local resources that can help in this process.
Definitely. So I have a group of students, and we are always looking for opportunities to work with companies, provide them, we provide them as interns. They work with the company on a specific project for a 6-month period, develop a solution, do a proof of concept or prototype, and it has worked well. And many of these students end up being hired by the company. One insurance company here, somebody mentioned earlier, has about 12 of those interns. They've hired all of them. One bank has about 10 of those ex-interns. So that's the process, to bridge the gap between what academia produces and what industry needs. Because the graduates that come out, they have the knowledge, they have the tools, industry has the problems, but to match those two things, you need to have, well, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but for instance, when I graduated in the US, it's different. You go into a research lab, there are about 20 PhDs there, so you get lots of help. Locally, it's a different environment. They go into industry, there's nobody there to really mentor them, to bring them up to their capability. So they have a lot of potential, but it's not extracted from them locally. So that's why we try to do this. We have this kind of process or model to do that.
Excellent. Maybe if I ask another question to academia, so because we have both local solutions as well as global solutions being used locally and affecting us all locally, so maybe what are some of the social and ethical issues, dilemmas even, that we are currently encountering?
Right, okay. So I'm very measured with responses to social and ethical challenges with AI and robotics. So, and I guess this was before I sent my bio, but there was a call for the United Nations Secretary General's AI Advisory Board across the 195 countries, and I end up making the list of one of 38. Well, I take that clap with some weight there, because I'll be representing the global Southwest, as that would be. So social and ethical issues are a major part of, and how we develop these AI systems, it's a major part of what we are looking at, and there has to be some consensus towards it. Right now, and especially for our countries in the Caribbean, we are called SIDS, Small Island Developing States, our countries, we can see this. There's some bias in the data. There's some disparity in the data. We are not well represented. And I thought, well, maybe one of the things to get away from that is, well, include us in these data sets. OpenAI, include us, right? But it was not that simple. We don't create data. We don't generate any data to be included. That's our major issue. And even if we do that and we give it away to these larger corporations, it becomes generalized across all of the data sets that are there. Another major issue that we are seeing is the one of losing jobs. As we automate things more, we start moving away, we have job displacement. I mean, we do have job creation, but the issue is how fast do we have job displacement versus job creation. So I think we need to, especially as a country, and well, when I speak, I will speak for the region in this case, we need to collaboratively come together to do major things. Regulators, institutions, academia, everyone needs to come together to look at these problems, generate data, look at funding and these kinds of things. I know you have follow-up questions from that.
I'd love to add maybe one other aspect around the ethics of this, which is it's worth noting that in the history of engineering and developing solutions, and now we're talking about AI, this is the first time where humanity and engineers were not able to validate every single input and output of the systems that we're creating. Before, if you design a carburetor for an engine, you just test it through the entire space of what's going to go in and you make sure that it works. Now we're building an AI that's going to, an AI in an autonomous car, let's say, that's going to be detecting strollers in the road. And you train it on all sorts of strollers, you try to get a diversity of strollers and whatever it may be, and then a regulator may ask, like, okay, is it always gonna avoid strollers? And
that's hard.
People are like, I don't know. It's like, okay, can you do something to validate it that it will always avoid strollers? Like, no, we can't do that. So it's like, okay, but it's 99.9% reliable. It's like, okay, great. Wait a second, we're gonna hit 1 out of 1,000 every strollers. Like 1 out of every 1,000 strollers, and that's not okay. But how many nines of reliability here? Is it 99.999 enough? Like, if we knowingly release a system that's going to hit 1 out of 1,000,000 strollers, is that okay? And we're adding, and we don't even know what that number is because it's so hard to analyze these systems, which is hard. So we have to make some tough decisions of how much do we withhold this technology from being deployed versus putting it out there, knowing that there are risks that we don't quite know how to quantify yet. Which is tricky.
I mean, that's interesting because there are some guys that they are just gung-ho with it. I mean, look at these open source solutions that you have coming out. These things are coming out, they are getting better, they are getting smaller, they can run on consumer hardware. I mean, the space for regulation, the discussion for regulation has to be made. We, at least at the Caribbean level, and at the national level, definitely need to be part of these discussions and have our voices heard. But I completely agree with you. With the guardrails, I see.
Right. Yeah. So there are two big dilemmas that I'm hearing. One, on the one hand, there is the bias and the training and the reliability of the systems and being appropriate for our context. And the second one has to do, what I heard, is about jobs and trying not to deploy anything in order to conserve all the existing jobs, but then creating the problem of having a big problem of becoming uncompetitive, and at the same time having to retool, retrain persons who have no experience at all. So, but how should regulators and technologists work together in this space?
You guys want to take one?
To you, but everybody else can also come to it if you have a specific idea.
Right. So I preach this on every single panel I talk to. I preach it's region specific, and our region needs a multi-stakeholder approach to this. Exactly what the UN did, we probably need to do exactly the same thing. We need everyone at the table. I hear technologists, I hear regulators, but everyone has to be at the table. Educators, collaborators, people from the arts and cultures, everyone needs to be at this table. This is going to affect you. AI is a transformative technology. It is coming to your sector. So I think that, and when I talk about it, and I talk about it in the context of Trinidad, I always use examples where you have multiple different sectors combining together to bring a positive outcome. Climate change, agriculture, tourism. That's just one example, off the top of my head. merge these things together and let AI power these kinds of things. Let's start having more discussions around what the regulations should be. A very common thing that people say is that technology moves very quickly and regulation just lags behind. And then we have these safety concerns that we don't know how to deal with them when something like that happens. So we can't have that at this point in time. We need to move very quickly in terms of having the discussions for the regulations, bringing in funding, working together with academia and industrialists and everyone, and bringing up solutions that we must still stay competitive.
So, yeah, let me add to that. In terms of the multi-stakeholder approach, yeah, I'm all for that. You know, we need to have everybody involved. And in fact, we have a similar situation with internet governance. And so locally, we have a multi-stakeholder advisory group that was formed especially to investigate, you know, policies, et cetera, to provide advice to the .tt registry. It's called TTMag. But that group has representatives from academia, from civil society, from, you know, technical society, from government, so about 6 or 7 different stakeholders. I think we need something similar for AI so that we can make those decisions for multiple stakeholders.
I'd love to play devil's advocate a little bit here with what both of you have said, where whenever I hear about a multi-stakeholder group or a joint task force or a committee that will collaborate to come up with a solution, nothing about that necessarily signals to me fast, I would say. I think it'll come to a fantastic solution, but it takes time. And I wonder that with the global context of so much of the world thinking about a lot of these regulations and what needs to happen, can we maybe, to get things going, it's like currently we have nothing. There's really not that much that's out there right now. Like, can we rely on some of the global templates and some of the other things that are happening on an international scale and apply that locally and get that there as a starting point, which hopefully will be better than nothing, and then iterate from there and adjust moving forward?
No, I agree. I mean, yeah, you need to start with something, you know, like for instance, you could start off with GDPR for data privacy stuff, and then build on that. So I'm not saying, you know, you start from scratch, but you have the local input into what is actually produced. But yeah, you need to see what other countries are, but not take it wholesale from them, which is another beef I have about. We tend to try to copy what other countries have done, and it is inappropriate for our environment.
I agree, because it's not in context. It does not work with our economy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work with our, and major things that we have are diversities in cultures and ethics and politics and race, all these different things, and those kinds of.
But the overall theme, what is coming through in the discussion I hear is, one, it is important to have different sectors and perspectives because everybody's going to be affected. Secondly, I'm hearing that the whole world is working on this topic and it is useful to learn from one another, and it needs to be contextualized within a local context, maybe through innovations in institutions so that this is done consistently, persistently, and faster. Okay, are there, for example, you're working, I think, together with Estonia, no? Or you have some collaborations. So are there examples that we can learn from some specific countries who have been working to really digitize and work these things, you know?
Yeah, well, they move fast. They spend the money. They get the money, they spend the money, and they move very quickly. I think once the need is, look at our cybersecurity.
But give us an example. Give us an example as to what does it mean practically? Like,
it means practically that we need to. A very specific example would be, I think it needs to be we need to look at it from our context and our country. What do we need right now if we were to play at this game? One of the things we need right now is to enhance our digital infrastructure. It means that we need to invest more money in our digital infrastructure to build out tools that can actually take our data. When AI comes, we can work on these kinds of tools. You see, it's so complex. I know that we want to look at other countries as examples, but we have to be very pragmatic in what we think about, what we are looking at to do. We are not Estonia. We are us. We have our own specific problems, our own specific challenges, and there are ways that we can overcome them. And one of the things that we need to look at right now would be reinforcing that digital infrastructure, right? So, I mean, that's my take on it. Right?
Okay. All right.
And let me add to that in terms of, yeah, I mean, it's not only money, it's keeping the human resources here to work in that, on and improving, IT, whatever, locally. We have this brain drain, a lot of the good students go abroad. We have to find ways to keep those students, and it falls, when I talk to companies, I tell them I look for three things, Well, of course, salary, but flexibility in work, being able to, to work remotely or come in like maybe every other day. And the third thing is interest in work, all right? And if you give somebody those three things, they will stay here. I mean, there's no need to go abroad. They will stay here and have an impact. And so, yeah, in addition to money, we need to have a better way of keeping our bright students here.
So maybe I can just jump on that point. What is the process by which, so you are working with a team locally, internationally, and you spoke the fact that so the various initiatives that you are taking, and Professor Hossein and others, and Dr. Ramlal are working and developing the talent. But what is the collaboration? How should we accelerate the work between academia and industry so as to move forward and create the capability and the opportunities for younger and older persons in the field?
Yeah, I think we're excited at Vertana to say that we've built very strong connections with academia here in Trinidad, specifically with the University of the West Indies, working very closely with the computer science department as well as the electrical engineering department, which has been great. Training them, interning with them, hiring them after they graduate, and I think that's been absolutely fantastic. And I think it would be amazing to see more companies relying on students from academia, not coming in as interns to maybe do data entry or do paperwork, but really push on the innovative initiatives of many of the companies locally and push that boundary, which I know your organization is helping with as well.
Yeah, so let me say a few things about TT Lab. Well, first of all, the name, it was supposed to be a temporary name, but it just came from some other things I'm involved in, TT Nick and TT Mag. But anyway, the idea there, as I said before, is to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So the students from, not only from UE, we have students from UTT, we have students from abroad, we have diaspora, we have people from industry. The idea is to collaborate, multidisciplinary, so people from economics, physics, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, a wide range of disciplines. The idea is to go out to industry, find job problems in industry, whether it's in electricity or telecommunications, whatever, and have them work on those real problems. And as I said before, typically they will get hired. But you need to have that bridge between academia and industry.
Right.
And Vertana does a fantastic job as well in doing that type of training, but not all companies are like Vertana.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that the key so far has been, for the most successful areas, have been when there were real problems where there was a collaboration between industry and academia to develop and apply that on a real problem. Now, once they graduate, what is the chance that they find a meaningful job? Or do they need to do somewhere else?
Locally.
I mean, we're hiring. Vertana is hiring. Please look. We would love to hire more talent.
Right.
It would be great to see more organizations that are pushing the boundary.
So you say, from your perspective, there is more demand than supply.
Yeah, we have vacancies.
You have openings.
We have openings. Just as a 20-person organization, right, there's only a certain rate at which we can absorb new hires. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
And I wanted to maybe just bring up one topic when we were talking about local industry and robotics in some of these areas, which is that we often talk about, how do we use this technology to reduce our labor costs, or how do we use it to produce goods more efficiently, or some of these types of problems. And so much of the narrative we've had in Trinidad and Tobago has been around we're a low cost of living, low cost of labor, just a low cost economy. And I think I think that's a hard narrative to fit in with. And I think I would challenge a lot of the business leaders that are here today to break that narrative. And when we think about exporting goods and exporting services, as you try to really push the boundaries of how little you can pay your employees and like do that as efficiently as possible, that's going to be a losing battle. And if you flip that to say, how can I build the highest value, most advanced products that are not available anywhere else in the world, and really partner with academia to push the boundaries of what you can build, all of a sudden cost is no longer an issue. It becomes if you can build it, there is no ceiling on the type of cost or the price you can command for what you're actually providing. And I think that is the narrative we have to change in order to really start providing high value goods at a low cost, whether it be digital goods or even physical goods.
And I want to jump on that because I do say, I call it niche industries. I say that we are specialized in niche industries and that we can show that if we can drive those niche industries with these newer tools that are available to us right now, we can play at the edge of most of these technologies and definitely provide that kind of value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Particularly when it's integrated into the global system.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe when you talk about niche industries, I'll just even bring one up. Like, it's very common for specialized carbon fiber parts or special machine parts to be shipped by boat or by land from Seattle on the west coast of California all the way to Miami. And that takes a long time. We have the expertise and machining expertise to be building these same types of parts in Trinidad and Tobago and ship them to Miami even faster than like coming from Seattle. And we can do that. We have the expertise. It's a very niche industry. Yeah. It's not an obvious industry, but it can be done. Yeah. Going into spaceships, airplanes, these specialized types of systems.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I can come back to sort of a little bit more a fundamental question that everybody's talking about, where Terminator. You didn't show that picture of Terminator, but
I almost did.
But okay, so there are two versions. There's a dystopian version where things go really badly, and then there's another one where the upside wins. So how can we reconcile these two, and what are we able to do to move it more towards a human-centric approach? Vijay or anybody, you're all in.
The robotics expert here.
So,
I'm wondering if I should hand it to the
so
UN.
I'm on the panel. I'm working with Mira from OpenAI, and they are doing AGI. So I really don't want to touch this question.
So yeah, maybe I'll catch this one then. But there's like new appliances that come into our house that are smart appliances, smarter vacuum cleaners or your smart microwave. Like, is your smart Roomba going to come attack you in your sleep? Like, no, probably not. It's designed to operate in a very clear sandbox and what it's allowed to do and what's not allowed to do. Maybe it might accidentally run over a toy and start breaking something, but it's not going to take over the world. But if you start talking about building a humanoid robot with arms and legs and a head that's able to walk freely through the world, plug itself in, which mechanically there are companies already building these things. And if you then tell that robot, oh, you're allowed to use a super advanced generative AI system to decide what it's going to do, and oh, by the way, you're allowed to write your own code, and oh, by the way, you also have all of the access to all of the data centers of Google and Amazon to then run these systems. If you give a robot all of that because you think you're making the world better, well, that's a big problem, and we need to start determining what we actually mean by building these systems that are making a better world. And answering that question, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned about the Terminator right now. I mean, I'm concerned about things like AI bias, the fact that you have hallucinations, the fact that people are using dirty data and getting, incorrect results. Those are the things that will cause more harm at present than
yeah, it's more the people than the actual technology.
What you're alluding to there as well, like misinformation.
Yeah,
how that
all disinformation, misinformation, deep fakes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And in terms of the privacy and security aspects, are there any particular things that you would like to point out to people to do or not to do? Since there's, you give data to everything, you open access to many things now.
I would encourage the audience here to be curious, understand what your data is being used for, and if you don't share any of your data and you hold it all, and if the Caribbean doesn't share any of its data in any certain form, then we're convincing the rest of the world to leave us behind and have biases in the data already. So we need to be sharing data, but we also need to understand what we're sharing it for and who we're sharing it for and what guards are in place.
I think it comes down to the platform in which we are sharing the data on. And exactly that. What is the purpose of sharing the data? And understanding what they're going to use your data for, and reading and understanding, even when this project finishes that they're doing, what else are they going to do with the data? But I have to agree with you to some extent there. I think that the Caribbean needs a data set repository. I know, Prof, you were doing things like this. We need to be represented more. We aren't there. At the panel, we talk about it as a global south, but just in the Caribbean with our diverse set of data sets, we can do so much. We can benefit our own selves. I think that our culture for not sharing data has to change. What we say, what some of the countries has told me was that, well, why am I giving them my data for? All they are going to do is take my data, make their systems better, then they will displace my job and they will be progressing and I will not. And you know, we can't have that kind of, that kind of motive happening. We need to create the data as well as create the technology that is going to run on that data.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we started up a open data platform, data.tt, maps.tt, like about 8 years ago, but nobody wanted to contribute data. The idea was that people contribute data, and then researchers would develop applications that would use that data. But we shut down maps.tt after a while because there was no new data coming in. So yeah, sharing is an issue. Of course, you need to be careful of what you share, but we need to share because especially if you look at AI bias, for instance, so the data being used to do training, let's say in a developed country will be dominated by whites. Now if we apply those solutions here, we'll get higher error rates because we are mostly blacks and browns. All right, so we need to start contribution data to avoid that from happening. And so those are some of the things I have one student working in that area on the impact of this bias on individuals and different classes, et cetera.
All right, maybe just a final question. You're in the parking lot, you're coming down from the 7th floor, sitting in the traffic jam, coming out of the building, and you have invested years trying to build the sector, right? And you're thinking, if we only did this next step, what would be a practical next step that the country, the different industries, different sectors should take to move the ecosystem further, the AI robotics ecosystem? What would have the biggest effect?
I would say collaboration.
Which one?
Collaboration.
Collaboration.
If we had more collaboration between academia, industry, and government, and CSOs as well, civil society organizations, that is needed to move things forward. Right now, we are working in isolation in many cases, not all cases, but for instance, we've been doing a lot with companies as well as CSOs like Cropper Foundation, etc. But we haven't been able to do much with government, which is unfortunate.
Okay, great. Collaborations? Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say collaboration
Same thing
as well, yeah. So, but I think it needs to be time framed. We can't sit and wait on this one. This one, the world is going to leave us if we sit and wait with this one. They are doing a lot of things. We need to be smart about what we do. We need to look at innovation. We need to look at bringing in funding from external sources with that kind of collaborations, building out projects that we put down on the ground quickly, and we run that. And we really strengthen our industries on those kinds of things.
This will be a little bit circuitous of how I get here, but what I would say is it would be great to see government and the public sector make well, first of all, I would agree with what you say about collaboration. And what I would add is that it would be great to see public sector and really the government make a decision about an area in AI and robotics that we want Trinidad and Tobago to become a world leader in, and then make a bet in that space that spans many years, like longer than election cycles. Like this will take 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 20 years. One example is the DARPA Grand Challenge that was in the United States. The US government decided to fund a competition 15 years ago, I want to say now, to invest in autonomous vehicles. This investment was made and it sparked the entire autonomous vehicle industry now that's over $100 billion, worth over $100 billion today, and it's only going to grow. All the people that were involved with that, everyone that was involved, that is, they're not even working anymore necessarily. The fruit that came from that took more than a decade to actually come. And I think having that long-term view and deciding where we're going to invest locally is a big deal. I don't know if it's something small like potholes, or maybe it's looking at the Caribbean. Maybe the Caribbean needs to be a world leader in maritime security. And we invest in that space, and then we become the world leader exporting that to the entire world. I don't know what the exact sector is that's going to be important, but I think we need to pick it and invest and know that there's going to be mistakes along the way. The public shouldn't feel bad when one of these initiatives doesn't happen. We need to keep investing and learn from it and trust that the outcome will present itself and the fruits of our labor will come, and not this year, not next year, not in the election, but maybe much longer than that.
Right. Yeah. So collaboration, including with the government, time-bound start, so start soon, but be committed to it for a longer time, and go for a moonshot on a particular topic. Well, thank you very much for a great session, very interesting. And I hand over back to Mark.
So ladies and gentlemen, thank this panel again. And I'll ask them to leave the stage and we'll begin wrapping things up. Thank you very much again. So that was the final session of this year's Big Data Forum, which then brings me to probably the most, well, I want to sum up a couple of things from that forum, from that session. Earlier in the day, we heard somebody echo our watchwords, together we aspire, together we achieve. And yes, that is it. The togetherness, we must do this together and in collaboration with one another. The word collaboration came up there, which is why you were encouraged to sit at tables with people you don't know. CSO, I don't think you all did that. But the point is, I think over the past couple of days, we have become, at least in this little part of our national ambition, a bit more together. There's a little bit more togetherness around big data and artificial intelligence and digitalization in general. And I hope that this continues. And you know that the UN is committed to continuing this effort. All right? The aspiration part, though, right? We need clear vision about where we are going. And I don't think that is being articulated. Different people might be coming from different avenues, but we need a national vision. And I think that needs to be articulated, something that people can rally behind and work towards. Oprah Winfrey said that the difference between a dream and a goal is that a goal has an end date, right? And we need to say we want to accomplish this thing by this date, or else it'll forever be a dream that we're working towards, and it'll be ephemeral and not possible for us to attain it, right? With that in mind, this forum has been something like a Sermon on the Mount sort of moment. I think almost every religion has one of those in it, where, you know, the deity, I'm not a deity, but we had demigods in the artificial intelligence world, some of which I still struggle to understand. But there's somebody that comes and says what the vision is in front of an audience, right? And the audience then become disciples and take that vision out into the world and spread it and try to bring people to that vision. And I really encourage you all now, with what you've learned over the past couple of days, to go out in the world and to be disciples for a digitalized and digitized Trinidad and Tobago that makes the most of these technologies. Last night during the cocktail reception, someone mentioned that this country used to be a world leader, right? And to some extent, they perceive this country as slipping. Yeah? That we used to be top in the Caribbean in terms of economy, we used to be top in education, we used to be top in sort of political leadership and ambition. And they suspect that, and not just in the Caribbean, worldwide, right? There was a time when Trinidad's math scores were as good as Singapore's. How do we get back there? How do we, again, achieve what I always echo my vision for Trinidad and Tobago, which is like being the best place in the world to live and the best place in the world to do business. We can get there. We were there, right? We can get there again, but it requires all of us in this room to go out and encourage other people to join this cause. I just want to say that it was Isaac Newton who said that, you stand on the shoulder of giants when you want to see further. And I can't end this conference without acknowledging the people who have made it happen. The panelists, the presenters, the moderators who came here, I think almost all did so free of charge and despite very busy schedules. We saw Nirad having to run to his board meeting. So I really want you all to give them a round of applause. Everyone who presented, everyone who was part of a panel, and everyone who moderated the sessions. Again, mostly on their own time and without being paid for it. And speaking of not being paid, I want to acknowledge all the volunteers that were here today. I think many of you all would have gotten some support for them when you from registration all the way to like showing you to your meals, telling you where the washroom is. All of them did that free of charge, right? So please. We acknowledge the Joint SDG Fund as providing the funding for this project, of which Big Data Forum is part. But Telios, who did the session with the children, free of charge, free of charge. And Huawei was also part of that effort. So please give them a round of applause for doing that. I think over the past couple of days, well, not for the past couple of days, for the past couple of months, we've given the hired staff a bit of headaches and heart attacks. So especially two ladies in particular, Stephanie and Nyla from the Hyatt. We apologize for all the headaches we've caused you. Please give those ladies a round of applause. All the exhibitors outside. Again, they came here without being paid for that. We didn't have to encourage them to do anything. They brought their wares. They came and set up. They sat there patiently, many of them without anybody coming to their booths. Although I know that when there were people in the hallway, collectively they got like lots of custom. But I really want to thank them. One of them came all the way from India for this event. So please give them a round of applause. This project, of which this Big Data Forum is a part, it involves 4 UN agencies. Actually, it involves more. I think you would have seen Joel Ali from IOM. You see Regina from World Food Programme. It's a collective effort. But 4 agencies really were the ones leading this drive. And I want to acknowledge the heads of PAHO WHO, who is the lead agency in this initiative, the ILO, UNEP, and ECLAC. From those agencies, I want to especially thank 4 people who have gotten behind this initiative and have stood behind it from day one. I think from when it was a blank sheet of paper and we were putting down the information to get the funds. I want to thank Dr. Paul Edwards, right, from PAHO WHO. I want to thank, well, in absentia, because he has since left to go to Malaysia, Diego Ray from ILO. Abdullahi Abdul Qadri, who you saw as one of the panelists, and who I think he's like a real champion of statistics and data in Trinidad and Tobago, and I encourage everybody to make connection with Abdul. All right, so Abdul. And also Javier, where's Javier? Yeah? Javier has traveled all the way here from Panama to be here at this event. I think many of you all would have met Javier, right? The dashing Latino walking around. So please, thank you again, Javier. Right. From the project steering committee, where we saw representation from the IDB, But I really want to thank Dindyal Ramratan. Where's Dindyal? Are you still celebrating with the presentation, boys? No. Dindyal, stand up. Let people see you. Dindyal came all the way from Barbados, right, to be here with us today. Yeah? I promise I'm getting through. There's not a long list to go again, actually. Yeah. All this design that you've seen was done by one guy, right? And I think sometimes I fear that we're like exploiting him because of his rates. His name is Adrian Ferret. He's like a real, all the graphic design, all the branding around this event was designed by Adrian, and I want you to acknowledge Adrian. Now it gets to the point where I'm probably going to cry, all right? There are a few people who have stood behind this particular event and this project. I think in spite of like incredible challenges, they have shown up every day and been good soldiers. And I really want to acknowledge the project management unit of this project, who are peerless, right? I would like Nandini Sukhan and Renuka Kangal to please stand up so people can see who you are, yeah? The fact that you ate, the fact that I'm speaking at a microphone, the fact that there's a stage, the fact there are like exhibitors outside, those two ladies, they put in some real long shifts, right, for this event. From my own office, I want to acknowledge Fane Richards, who you saw moderating a session here. Fane led all, well, again, it's a collaborative effort, but every team, if you look at Manchester United, you see what a football team looks like without a captain. Right? Every team needs a captain, and in terms of communication, Fane led the communications around this. And I really want to acknowledge Fane. And I also want to acknowledge Raymond Prasad from our office, who is always like showing up and always does really yeoman service. Anything we ask him to do, he comes and he does it like, you know, everybody wants to know who this guy is. In terms of sort of like, you know, back office support, I really need to thank Tanya Bailey and especially Renee Berriman Shepherd for their work on this project and with helping us make this event a reality. There's been a really, where is Juliana? Is Juliana in the room? Okay, so if you see Juliana, you can't miss her. She has red hair, right? At least for this event. So I really need to thank Juliana, who came. We kind of paid Juliana, but I think Juliana was working well below market rates to make this thing happen. And I really need to thank her. Again, Juliana has been a permanent secretary in multiple ministries, and you wouldn't know it. She's so down to earth. I need to thank two people in particular, going back to when this thing was a blank sheet of paper. Last night, we got a call when it was over, like asking like how it went. The first person who wanted to know how this thing went was a guy named Surgeon Derrich, who was the team leader in the UNRCO office and who was here from day one and who pushed the first two iterations of this big data forum through. And I really want to publicly acknowledge Surgeon. Yeah. Some of you all will probably know Surgeon, yeah? And he's a big, beefy Serb, and you can't miss him. You know, when he comes in, he's like the loudest guy in the room. But his heart is equally big, right? And I think his ambition for this country was equally big as well. Lastly, well, not lastly, second to last, I want to thank Anand Maraj. Where is Anand? Yeah? Stoops. I could stoops in public, yeah. Right? But again, it was a joint effort, right? This project has been a joint effort with people making really big sacrifices. I'm looking at Javier, for example. But Anand has been the one who this was his brainchild. I think most of the presenters here today and most of the audience have probably crossed paths with Anand. And I think it really it really would do well for us to give Anand a really big round of applause. And the fact that he doesn't want to be here for the applause says much about him. Right? Lastly, I need to thank you, the audience. Right? It's been 2 days of technical talks, right? 2 days of really intense. We didn't even stop to give you all a break for lunch, right? But you all stuck by this big data forum. You listened to every presentation intently. Even with the children screaming in the background, you didn't complain and say, oh, where are you going to tell it? It was really, really a nice event to have and to host. And I really must thank you. And I thank you especially for being so attentive. You asked intelligent questions. And I think, I hope, and I believe that discipleship that I mentioned earlier, that you all will now take out into the world with you. So please give you a round of applause. Thank you very much. And with that, the event is over. I ask you to please go in peace.
I am so very sorry. The event is not over as yet. A couple of seconds on your behalf. Mark has been stellar in being the MC of this event. I especially liked the session that he moderated. So please, a round of applause for Mark and all the work that he has done in making this a reality. Thank you very much.
That's Paul Edwards, by the way. As we refer to him, GQ. You can see why. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming. It was really wonderful. But again, let this be the start of something, not the end.